Okay, so this is part 2 of the Argon 1v2 case test, comparing it to the Ice Tower cooler. You can see all the setup is exactly the same. It's the same day. I've just finished editing the other video and I figured I'd shut these down and swap the two over. So shut down. So now I can switch them both off and go about the process of putting this pie in this case and putting this cooler on top of the pie that's in this case. I'm going to leave all the cables and the drives the same. So it feels warm, but it doesn't feel hot. Okay, that's all 8 screws out, but I can't seem to get it out. What is it? I can't work out what it's stuck on. Ah, there it is. Oh, of course it's the GPIO pins, isn't it? So let's pop that thermal pad onto here. And then we need to take this one and remove the Ice Tower cooler from this one. What do I have to do? Go from the base. Okay, so I need to make sure all of these go over with the right board. Just leave that like that. Are these right? So this is the one that was in the Argon case. So you can see here, one of them came from 52 Pi sent me one, an 8 gig Pi in a case. So let's put this back in here and let's pop this board on and let's pop that in, lining up the GPIO pins again. Okay, so let's plug all this in exactly as it was before and power that on and press the power button on the Argon case. I can hear the fan spin up. So this drive will have the Argon script on it, so it's ready to come on at 65, but obviously it wouldn't before. But I'll do the same test and see if the Pi makes a difference or if it's to do with the software that's been installed. Okay, so open source, MP4 file, and open, and let's hit start. Okay, so this is where I've got on the edit so far. I'm showing you on my iPad. So you can see 6:11:14 is where it finishes. If you have a look at the bottom right hand corner, that's when that box comes up which tells you when it's finished. So if I go back to the beginning of this edit cut, so this is where I started it, and you will actually look on the screen just at the top where the green turns to red. That's when it starts, and it actually tells me handily here 3 minutes 28 and 10. So I know that that took 3 minutes 28 and 10, which is weird because in the previous video, in part 1, 1 minute 47:52 before. So it's got faster because the other cut comes 3 minutes and 11 longer. So the original one took, what, about 5 minutes? Yeah, 1 minute 47 plus 3 minutes and 11, about 5 minutes. Whereas this one just took 3 minutes 28 and 10. So I'm confused. I'll keep testing. And you can see the temperature only got to 48 degrees, which is very, very low. Something is slowing it down, or something is keeping it cooler. The fan hasn't come on at all. The fan only came on when I initially switched it on. You can hear some fan noise and then it switches off. But because I've set it to come on at 65 degrees and run at 50%, I would hear it come on, but it hasn't got anywhere near 65 degrees, which is weird because I'm used to using these tests on Handbrake and they often really max out the CPUs and do get very hot. So let's try Stressberry on this before we shut it down and maybe try with a different drive. So Stressberry and run. And again, this should get hot. So let's see how hot it gets and also how often it stays at 2100. Okay, so the Stressberry test has finished. You could see from P-Sensor that it got to only 55 degrees. So it's not a stress test. It's really not getting hot. And part of that reason seems to be that it throttles a lot. So this is the idling bit. But then when it starts the stress test, it starts at 600, 2.1 for a bit, then drops to 600, 2.1, 600. Whereas the other test was showing at 2100 almost all the time. And you can see here at the end, does 4 of the high temperatures and then all the rest are low, some of them 700s. Really weird results. So this is 2 different pies that have been giving just staying really cool. Now, I'm going to try the Kde hard drive on this Argon case because that hasn't got the Argon 1 software on it, and I'm going to see if it allows it to get hotter. Again, the fan isn't cutting in, so what is keeping it cool at the moment is the fact that it seems to be throttling itself. So let's shut this down and try it with the other drive. Okay, so unplug that one and pop this one in, and then I can start that up. Do like the power button. Okay, here we go again. So open source, MP4, and start. So temperature's been still really cool, still 53 is the top temperature it's been at. What's interesting is the wattage keeps changing quite a lot, and I'm wondering if this is because it's throttling, but it shouldn't be at this temperature. Okay, that's just finished. I need to check the time on my iPad. Okay, so 3:23:10, so 5 seconds faster than the Crucial drive, but very similar time. Okay, so running the test again. This time I'm running the Pi power adapters going straight into both devices. There's no power cables in between them or anything, it's just going straight in, just to get rid of some of the variables. So the Kde drive is on the Argon 1 and the Crucial drive is on the Ice Tower cooler. So let's hit start at the same time. Yeah, they both started very similar. So in theory, this is going to be quicker because the software didn't seem to make the difference. It's possibly the the breakout board, the one with the HDMI, that's slowing it down. I don't know. Although at this stage, I'm getting the same sort of results now. 28, 29, 30. Yeah, it's about the same. It's going to end at the same time, I reckon. It was almost identical timing. That's really interesting. The conspiracy theory is over. It must have been something to do with one of those cable configurations that I had on power. I'll show what I was doing in a minute. So I'm going to switch the drives over so that the Argon 1 software is on here and the Ice Tower cooler setting from Raspberry config is on this one, and see what happens with cooling. Okay, so I have the right software for the right device. So this fan is set to come on at 80 degrees, which it won't get to. And the Argon 1 is set to come on at 65, which it may well get to now that it's going to work. Well, I think it's going to work properly anyway, and I think we're going to get similar results on both, which is great. So let's start this test again at the same time. So start. Yeah, that was pretty good. And how we're looking, very similar on the percentages. You know, it was the power that was doing it, and I was starting to think that maybe it was something about the board that was slowing it down. Obviously, conspiracy theory wise, you might be thinking that a manufacturer might be able to throttle slightly to give better cooling results. Looks like it's none of that, and it turns out it is an amazing product, and the cooling is great on it. So temperatures wise, 54, 60. So LilRedDog was right. This does actually cool better than the Ice Tower cooler, which is amazing because this is in a case. And this is out in the open. Really impressive. I haven't heard the fan yet. Well, I have when it starts up, and it is a bit of a whiny little fan, but it doesn't come on. So fan noise isn't really an issue if it's not going to come on, and especially on something like this, which is a hard test. This definitely maxes out the Pi, whereas this fan on 3.3 volt is pretty much silent. It is very, very hard to pick up on, but yeah, if the fan doesn't come on when it's doing this sort of really hard work, then it's not an issue. So are they going to finish at around about the same time? 93%, 93%. They're very similar. So even though these are two Pis, one that I got right at the start when the 8 gig came out, and the other one was given to me probably, I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, something like that. So slightly quicker on that, but nothing in it. And all sorts of reasons could be given for that. And temperature wise, 66 degrees, fan didn't cut in, 57 degrees, fan didn't cut in. So absolutely, this is the better cooler from a point of view of how well it keeps the Pi cool. Still doesn't necessarily work for me in how I use my device, because I want all my ports at the front and how I change the drives and everything, but it is great. So there was nothing to worry about. Let me show you what I was doing with the cables. So I had official Raspberry Pi power adapter, and that was going via a USB-C coupler, so joining this to this USB-C cable, and then this USB-C was plugged into the Argon case, and that was how I was getting the display to come up. On the Ice Tower cooler case, I was using exactly the same setup, but with my white Raspberry Pi adapter plugged into a coupler, plugged into a USB-C to A adapter. This is a USB-A, and then that was giving me the display on this device. But it turns out that this seems to be the thing that was causing problems, and I've been using this for several days now, and I haven't noticed any problems or throttling or anything like that. But on those speed tests, it definitely did seem to cause a problem. So I didn't have any problem with the USB-A, which is the one I would think would be more likely to cause a problem. It was actually giving me less performance. So whether it was detecting something, it could be that this is even a smarter cable. And because the Pi power adapter isn't a PD style cable, it is just a normal USB-C, I wonder if it was detecting it and throttling it, thinking there was a problem. But yeah, nothing wrong with the Argon case at all. So let's keep testing the Argon case. Okay, so much tidier now. I can concentrate on just the one device. And I wanted to see how much hotter it gets with the M.2 drive. So what I'm going to do is a Stressberry test, play YouTube for half an hour, and then do another Stressberry test and see what temperature we get, and do the same with the M.2 drive. Okay, so let's go Control-Alt-T, Stressberry is here, and start that and see what we get. I better start P-Sensor as well, because that will remember what the max temperature is. So 36 degrees, lovely and cool at the moment. Okay, this is more like it. You can see that it's holding its frequency at 2.1, and the temperature's going up, but it's still 50 degrees. It's still nice and cool. So we've reached 53, which is still again pretty reasonable, and it stayed at 2.1 in all those tests. Okay, that's all done, so let's straight away launch Chromium. I'm not going to manage half an hour because I've got to pick my daughter up from the train station, so I'm going to go with 10 minutes of YouTube and then go back and do a Stressberry test. And how do I get P-Sensor to be on the top of that? There we go. So let's leave that playing and see if it gets beyond 53. I wouldn't think it would. And let's run that Stressberry test again. And YouTube, it stayed around about 46, 47 anyway, so it wasn't getting any hotter than that. But obviously now we're starting from a point of 46 degrees, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so it's going for 2.1 now. We've got 53 as the highest it's been so far. We go 53.5. And you can see it's maintaining 2.1, no problem at all now. Oh, we're going up a bit, 55. Okay, so it got to 58, and it's going to start cooling down now. But again, still didn't need the fan. So maybe I should have overclocked higher. So now what I need to do is install Kde Plasma onto the M.2 drive. So let's plug that in. So this is a 120 gig Kingston drive, which you can see has shown up here now. And let's start Imager and install exactly as we had before. So this one here is my most recent one, and let's write that image, and yes. Okay, so that's all written, so let's shut it down and I'll install it into the Argon case. Okay, so I've taken out the 4 screws, so I guess it's just as simple as pop it on. Yeah, and it obviously fits perfectly, just makes it a bit taller, and screw the 4 screws back in. Okay, that's the last one in. So if we flip it over, you can see that these USB 3s line up perfectly now for this adapter. So that's the connectivity. Let's spin it around. Yep, looking good. And that boots up nice and quick. So let's get the Stressberry test from Documents and copy that into Terminal and run the test. Whoa, look at the temperature of the drive, 99 degrees C. That's a bit different. I know that M.2's definitely run hotter, but I didn't expect it to be quite as high as that, unless that isn't reporting it. We'll see if it changes. But as far as the CPU goes, 39 degrees, 41 is the max it's been. So it's nice and cool at the moment, having been switched off, and obviously I've opened up the casing. Okay, I'll have to do the test again because I've not overclocked to 2.1. So let's close that down and open a terminal. Sudo nano boot config.txt, and we need to get rid of the lines that are 1800. So we'll hash them out, and as I did with the other ones, I enabled the 2100 overclock. There is a big overclock in there if you want to mess about with it, but obviously do so at your own risk. So Control X, yes, and enter. And let's reboot to apply that overclock. Okay, let's try that again at 2100. So it's on the fast bit now, 54 degrees, 54.5. Still, yeah, that M.2 drive can't be correct, can it? 58 without the M.2 drive. We've already beaten that because we just hit 59.4. So it's definitely generating more heat inside the case. We might have the fan come on if we're lucky. Maybe not on this pass, but more than likely after we've run the 10-minute YouTube video. 60 degrees. But 60 degrees is nothing to worry about at all. Okay, all done. So straight into YouTube at 1080. And we'll turn on Stats for Nerds. I would imagine it will drop frames at the start, but it should sort itself out. And I'll come back in 10 minutes and run another stress test. Okay, so that's 10 minutes of YouTube. So we've got to 60 degrees is the highest it's got to. So let's close that down and go back into the terminal and put Stressberry on again and see if we can get the fan to come on. So it's currently 52, so it's actually cooled down quite a bit. And because this waits for a baseline temperature, I still don't think it's going to get the fan to come on, which is very admirable at 2100. So the highest it got before was 58 degrees, so we're 5 degrees higher at the moment, which is not too bad at all, considering the heat that an M.2 drive gives off. 64.7, I'd round that up to 65, but it looks like P-Sensor doesn't want to. Yeah, 65. No fan yet though. Of course, I haven't enabled the script on this because this is the other one. So what I'm going to do is overclock to the higher settings, which are in here already. They wouldn't normally be in Raspberry Pi OS, but they are in my version of KDE. So all of these, let's see if we can get the fan on. So you can see there's an over voltage of 12, which is needed to get 2300. This may not be stable, so it may crash. Nothing to do with the Argon case. The Pi stock speed was 1500. They upped it to 1800 at one point. But when we're running at 2300 with an over voltage of 12, obviously it's pretty good. So Control X, yes, and enter. So that saves that. So let's install the Argon script for power button and fan control as we did before. Argon 1-config to configure it. And yes. So let's have a look at the number 3 option, customize behavior. Provide minimum temperature in Celsius, then enter. Oh, okay, 65. Provide fan speed for 65. So I'm going to go with 50. Provide minimum temperature in Celsius. So I'm just going to press enter because I think I'm going to go with just that setting, if it will let me. You saved 1 pairs. Right, okay. So let's reboot to let the overclock take effect. Okay, so we're at 2300. I have already done this test and it did crash when it was doing Stressberry. Nothing to do with the case. It will be that it's just too much for the Pi to handle. But let's try it one more time and see if we can get it to work. So let's run that test. It's when it started using all cores that it started to, well, it just froze. Yeah, it's crashed again. Obviously my Pi can't handle this sort of overclock. Yeah, the mouse has stopped moving. But thanks very much to LilRedDog for giving me the super thanks on YouTube to enable this test. I really enjoy doing it. It's been pretty much all day, but it was interesting, especially when I thought there was some sort of weird conspiracy theory. Turns out it's a great case, and I was using a cable that somehow was incompatible. Anyway, I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.